And
thank you.
The recording has started. Okay, so yes, I'm Kate and I'm 19 and I am the daughter of the publisher of this book, Colleen. And I myself am in the process of getting diagnosed as autistic. So this book was relatable. Anyway, okay, so starting off in the order of people as I can see them. Oh no, wait, that's a lie. Sally.
Hello.
Hello. Introduce yourself.
Okay, I am Sally Partridge. I am an author of young adult fiction, children's fiction, and short stories from Cape Town. I think this is my 7th book for young people, The Girl Who Chased Otters. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this one. It's been a long time in the making. So thank you everyone for being here and for those that are joining us.
Yes, thank you for saying the name of the book. That is a good place to start. Okay, Alex.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Alex. I'm also 19. I'm a friend of Kate's. I just finished my first year of university and I'm studying gender studies and linguistics. And I am also autistic, so this book was also relatable for me.
Okay, Sabreen.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabreen. I'm 19. I'm also a friend of Kate's, and I'm currently a med student at Stellenbosch University.
I forgot to add in my intro, hi, I'm Sally. I'm also a friend of Kate.
It's going to become like friend of Dorothy, but for autistic people.
Okay, Juanita.
Oh crap. Hi, I'm Juanita. I feel like I'm probably one of the older readers. I'm 28, 29. What is time? I got diagnosed as autistic at 26 years old. I suppose what's relevant to this is I used to work at Modjaji and I read The Girl Who Chased Otters when it was just a wee manuscript. So I'm a writer, researcher, PMA candidate, and autistic advocate who has written about her experience as a late diagnosed autistic adult. Oh, and she, they pronouns, please.
Yes. Okay, and Qailah?
Hey everyone, my name is Qailah. I'm 19 and also a friend of Kate. I'm an engineering student at UC.
Cool. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to ask Sally some questions so we can get to know the book a bit. So, Sally, we received the manuscript for The Girl Who Chased Otters 2 years ago, if I'm correct. So when did it actually start in your brain?
Sure. I would need to check, but I think it was 2014 or even before that. It's been in development a long time. Yeah, so I think it didn't take very long to write, but it kind of started many years ago, and then it was published in Germany first before it was published in South Africa, if that makes sense. So it's been in my stable for a while, but this is the first time that it's coming out in English.
I'm sure that people are curious about the German thing. Is there a reason? Do you have German heritage? Are you connected in Germany?
Oh no, it's very mundane. The rights were sold in Germany, by a literary agent. It's as boring as that.
Okay. So then I also wanted to know, where did your inspiration come from? Because the characters are so specific and their experiences feel so authentic, and especially the school system. And so I was just wondering, was it based on your own experiences or your friends, or are you just that good of a writer?
So I've actually, realized that for me as a writer, there are two types of books that I like to write. So it's the more kind of like the easygoing murder mystery for teens, or sweet romance, or kind of like your standard YA or children's book. So they have a standard structure, and you pretty much come up with the idea, you fill in the key points, the beginning, the middle, the end, and then you go ahead with the hero's journey, and boom, you have a book. And then there's another type of book that I realized that I've been writing, and it started with Dark Poppy's Demise, which was the story of a girl who met someone over the internet who turned out to be a predator. And that was something that came from my experience in my life, and as well in mine, which was kind of like the miniatures that go in the of relationships. You had the character of Qailah, who was very self-destructive. Not you, Qailah, a different Qailah, obviously. So she was very self-destructive and insecure, and I found that I drew on a lot of my own insecurities as a teenager, which led to very specific self-destructive behavior. And I find that with trauma in your life, it kind of gets pushed aside. Well, especially in my case, you don't think about it every day. You kind of forget about it. It ends up on a shelf somewhere in your mind, in a shoebox or a jar, and it just sits there and gathers dust. But sometimes I find when I'm writing a novel, I'll have the initial idea and I'll start writing, and then my subconscious will go into my mind, take that jar, shake it out, and then I interpret all the pieces that fall out. And that was something that was very cognizant for me with this book. I had the initial idea of these two characters who are kind of fringe characters at school who fall in love. And I started writing it from that perspective, and then all of a sudden, all these dusty jars just opened up over the pages, and I started exploring the story from these two perspectives, and they almost became avatars for me. So Nathan is on the autistic spectrum. I've never been specifically diagnosed as on the spectrum, but as a child I was very much an observer of what other people did, and it was very difficult for me to cross that boundary to go from being an observer to being normal. It seemed like everybody around me was happy and carrying on with their lives. So I spent more time watching and interpreting and observing, which also is really, really good experience as a writer, because that's what you do. You observe and then you interpret. And then on the other side, you have someone who is very insecure and who wants to be normal and wants to belong, and that insecurity again leads to this destructive behavior. And I really wanted it to be from that observation viewpoint. So it's almost like I am trying to interpret what is happening and why it happened, and it almost becomes like a parable, or not a parable, like an allegory in a way, So I'm trying to I'm actually a lot better writing ideas down and talking about them. But that's kind of how the story evolved. So it started off as a girl meets boy or a boy meets girl story. And then my subconscious kind of got in the way and said, no, hang on, I'm writing something else now. And it just became me trying to, I guess, interpret experiences from my past that I don't really want to acknowledge or want to think about, but it kind of feels like, you know, I'm forcing myself to. And it just, yeah, it became this allegorical story of, you know, the pitfalls of wanting to be like other people, and, you know, what could happen if it goes wrong, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, that does make sense. And I certainly also felt that. I went to Rustenburg Girls High School for the majority of my high school career. So, and I think it has, I mean, I also went to an all-girls primary school as well. And so I certainly felt like Virginie, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her name,
I
but
think so.
the mean girl. She suddenly felt familiar, and the way that the school setting felt was definitely, it felt sometimes almost too real, because it made me also want to just like, from, you know, my trauma. So I think that really speaks to your writing. And so while we're talking about setting and stuff, I'm going to open it up to the other people on the panel, if that's what we can call it. So if you guys want to say anything.
I mean, I also found the setting quite realistic and familiar. Like, a lot of the time I was imagining the school setting to be exactly like Rustenburg, because I went to the same school as Kate, and it very much felt like that. And also the classmates felt, I've definitely met people that are like exactly that. So like Sean and Virginie, and so yeah, and all of her little minions. So that felt quite like familiar. And yeah, and also just like the setting of Rondebosch, it was very cool to like read about places that I recognize and I've been to, and you know, I know exactly what it looks like, and you know, I know the names, and you know, that sort of thing. So that was a nice thing, because I guess I haven't really read a lot of South African fiction, so it was like very cool to like see that in a book. So yeah.
Yeah, I used to live in Rosebank, just on the common. So we've recently moved to the other side of the world. So I like to I like to express, you know, my love for places in my writing as well. So it's kind of like a little snapshot of somewhere I've been.
Yeah, I also felt the same, that it was very like close to home, because I've also been to school in the southern suburbs. And it was, you know, not only like reading a book that is explicitly set in South Africa, but in a place where I grew up and went to school. It was very nice to get that, but also a lot of the times it did hit a bit close to home, where I was like, oh, this is like exactly something that I've experienced before, and kind of made me like, you know, get a little pang in my chest, but also in a good way.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in high school you do have that hierarchy where it's almost like a training ground where you learn the social skills necessary to, I guess, survive in the world. And I don't think people are actually cognizant of some of the things that they do and how it affects other people. So just, you know, completely on a side note, my partner and I have started watching Survivor on Showmax, and you actually see people regressing to that state where, you know, if anybody shows weakness, you know, everybody gangs together and, you know, goes after them. So, and there's always a leader and a pack mentality, and that's kind of, you know, what interests me, because in high school, you don't actually recognize that that's happening, or that you're guilty of that sort of behavior. And that again was important for me, to have this character that was very observant, that instantly recognized that was happening. Even in the workplace, I'm very observant of how people react to each other, and how they put themselves across. And it's almost like I'm able to put them in different boxes, where I kind of unpack their behavior and try to understand what this human is about. So that's why I think Nathan was the perfect narrator for the story, because he has this level of insight and understanding that people are just too busy to have, or they're just not interested in having. So I'll find if I go to a restaurant with my partner, I'll start looking at people and trying to understand what they're doing. There'll be a couple arguing, and I'll like, what are they arguing about? And I'll try to understand what it is. And sometimes he'll say, stop analyzing people, or stop making up stories about people, especially when his mother throws something of mine away that was in the fridge. He's like, stop trying to make up stories about people. So it's almost something I do unconsciously that I can't switch off. So it was interesting for me to kind of create that into a character.
Okay. Juanita, you look very deep in thought. Do you want to say anything, or are you just?
No, I'm having a little bit of a different experience, and I suppose because I went to high school sort of in the median between long ago and not so long ago, where I'm struggling to articulate myself, but in some ways it was very relatable, but in some ways it was much like I experienced high school through the media I was watching. I was an undiagnosed autistic teenager who was in the closet. I stayed home and I played Sims all weekend and read fantasy, and I had no life. So like I can't really speak to that aspect of it, but it was in some ways very reminiscent of the experience of reading books about other people that I read in high school, where I was like, oh, people go to each other's houses. That's a normal thing. They're just showing up at each other. That makes sense. So some of the relatability was just so different for me, but it felt familiar in that it felt like a lot of the sort of YA and teen stuff I consumed then, but except I was like, I know that street. So it was very different, but in many ways I think I was very much a Nathan in high school. Completely different special interests, completely different manifestation. He's much more of a classic manifestation of autism, but the ability to recognize social patterns was something that was kind of my party trick if I went to parties. And it was interesting because you would think with that you'd be able to assimilate, that you would be able to work your way into these spaces because it's so transparent what's happening, but it's also completely befuddling because once you get onto one-on-one interactions, it gets completely confusing. It's almost as though you need that distance. So his interactions with Olivia being incredibly confusing for him, that resonated. You can tell, it's easy to tell, for instance, when two people across the room from you are flirting with each other. But I've been on a date with someone without knowing it was a date, and I saw that in there. Yeah. I don't know. So I do and I don't relate, but I do have this weird nostalgia for it because it represents as much of a high school experience that I never had as the high school experiences I was consuming when I was too busy not living my actual high school experience. So that was a very interesting, weird feeling. That's why I was deep in thought.
You know what I've actually
Yes.
found with readers, especially with mine, where does everybody else hear that raining sound? I'm wondering, I'm hoping it's not my Minecraft, because usually
Oh,
this is what
it's
it sounds
sorry.
like when it rains in Minecraft.
It's my cat's water fountain. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was like, because I've got it minimized, and I'm like, oh God, is it raining?
No, my cats are spoiled brats, and they have a water fountain. And yeah.
Yeah, as I was saying, like when I wrote mine, which was again, me trying to make sense of who I used to be, there's this beautiful line from a song that I love, and it says that your scars are the map of who you used to be. And that's kind of how I saw this character, is that I was trying to understand who she was to understand who I was, and I feel that when you write from a source of truth within yourself, and you write from experience, and you draw on emotions and just a real place, instead of just trying to create a character and then trying to make them seem real, it creates this almost universal feeling in readers, where they might not identify with the character as a whole, but there are certain aspects that really resonate, because it is coming from a real, true place, instead of just trying to make something up and putting it in to give the character motivation for what they're doing.
Yes, I mean the motivations certainly felt realistic. I mean, at first when I was reading it, because I've so recently, i.e. last year, only started figuring out that I'm autistic, it means that it hasn't, I've just thought that that's how everyone's brain was. So I'm also quite observant of human behavior, and I just thought, oh, I didn't know this was this was an autistic thing. Why is Nathan, I was just like, no, that's just, I'm like Nathan. I don't know what this book is talking about. And then I started thinking about it more, and I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, and so yeah, I mean, it's partly just how my brain works, but I think also being observant of people is also partly to do with the fact that I'm an only child, so I like bored, and also just like having been in therapy for 6 or 7 years now. Again, also time means nothing. But yes, so like analyzing people's behavior, and like for example, when Nathan made the connection between Olivia's love of otters and her dad leaving, I had like made that connection as well. And I think it almost surprised me that Olivia hadn't, but I think, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that she hadn't, because you don't notice your own things until you're ready to. And so, yeah.
And if I may,
yes.
I think it's exacerbated because the common misconception about autism is that we are emotionless robots who don't understand how people work, when the reality is often we dedicate so much time to trying to figure out how people work. But, and this is something that I think was very well done with Nathan, and I can see he's evolved from drafts, is sometimes just because we understand the rule doesn't mean we understand the feeling. So we know that when our housemates' shoulders are held a certain way and they let out a heavy sigh, that means don't talk to them till they've had their coffee because they're in a grumpy mood. But we don't know the cause. We may assume it's us. We don't know what to do with that information necessarily. It's purely analytic. There's a dual empathy model of emotions, and essentially autistics are good at one mode of empathy and not at another, whereas allistics are better at that other one, which is why we come across as unempathetic, because our attempts to show empathy don't read as empathy.
That's so true.
Sorry. Special interest.
Qailah, you look like you've got something on your mind.
Yeah, many things. But yeah, a lot of little bits of every character I think resonated with me. Interestingly enough, Sean, who is sort of a more minor character, resonated with me in the way that throughout the novel, I was trying to place myself, or sort of see where I fit in this sort of school hierarchy, into like Nathan's little world, like where I would be, where I did fit during high school. And I think that Sean was such an interesting character because I didn't know what to make out. I didn't know what to make of his character. I kept feeling like he's here for a reason. Like he's, the short conversations, the interactions he had with Nathan. And I just sort of, my opinion would be that he was someone that was, who was there, who sort of floated through school on sort of in the middle, not an outcast, not maybe the most popular, but just there without sort of actively doing anything to maybe not quite improve Nathan's life, but maybe involve him a little more. But he did he spoke to him, which is more than most of the other children did. So I found that character quite interesting, just to sort of try and dissect and also question myself where I would.
And Sean's interesting as well. I'm sorry, tell me if I talk too much. I tend to take over spaces and I don't mean to. But Sean is also interesting because that's that motivation that we couldn't quite figure out why. That's such an experience that I've had with myself, with like popular people being nice to me and immediately be like, what the hell is going on here? What's the motivation? You're trying to trick me. And now as an adult looking back on being a teenager, I'm like, oh no, some of them were, yes, because some people are assholes. But some of them were just bros being bros. You know, they didn't have that calculating element to them to have a motivation. They were just like, oh, you're here, hi. And not everything's that deep. And sometimes when you are very observational, and also when you do have the tendency to put people in boxes, when they don't align with that box very well, you get confused. And that was an experience that I definitely recall, like being at my first and last high school party, and like one of the sort of sports people like being like, hey, Juanita, how are you? And me just being like, what is going on? Deeply suspicious. I can't do this.
Yeah, I had the same, like, it was actually really interesting, Qailah, hearing you speak about Sean, because when I read the book, I was so suspicious of Sean. Like I was assuming that there was going to be something coming up later where he was going to like trick Nathan or have like some subplot with him, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, what? That's so weird, because I definitely also have that thing where if a popular person or someone who's like seen as popular at school talked to me, I was so confused to why, because I've never been in those circles, and it never occurred to me that some of those people are just genuinely being like nice.
The more time you spend out of school, the easier that is to understand. Can I just say, like, the longer you're out of there, the easier that'll get.
Yeah, I still remember when I was in, I think it was my first year of high school. I used to bite my nails really badly, and there was this girl from primary school who just underwent this transformation in high school, and she was immediately, embraced into the it crowd, the top of the food chain. And I remember, in music class, we still had music class in those days. I don't know if you still do, where you just sang ridiculous songs like Nelly the Pink and that sort of thing. And she tapped me on the shoulder and said that if you file your nails down, they'll grow back stronger and then you won't want to bite them. And then that was the first and only thing she said to me that entire year, or for the rest of high school, I think. And it's still stuck with me because, that sort of thing was just like completely out of the blue and astounding. Like, okay. And I still do that. I still file my nails down short so they grow back stronger. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's an attempt to like get you into the fold, but they don't always realize that the fold is toxic. So like my version of that was being in grade 10 and being the only girl, well, about that, but being the only girl to not shave my legs and having all the girls tell me I needed to shave my legs and me receiving that as bullying at that age. But now as an adult realizing, no, they were trying to help in their way, but their help revolved around normative behaviors and normative gender and normative things that I was never going to feel good in. So of course it, and that's interesting, just the ways we miss each other.
Like
Always
I remember asking my partner, I was mining for story ideas. And I asked him, what was your high school like? Tell me about, how it shaped you and, like trying to like get into, the years the formative years that shaped him into who he is today. And he said, no, he's had the same friends since childhood. High school was amazing. Still friends, still friends with the same people. Like, really? Okay. No stories there. It's so bizarre. Like,
you were Sean.
That didn't happen. Yeah, he was a Sean. Like, just sailed through, kind of like dodged all the traps. Incredible. I always wonder, like, what would it have been like, if I, socialized more as a child, or, I wasn't, so introspective or shy, or, had better self-esteem, would I be different today? And I think, well, actually, no, I like who I am today. It took me a long time to like myself and to accept myself. I'm 39, so it took a very long time to get there. But, I think, you have to kind of realize your experiences do shape who you are, and to recognize that, and to not be burdened by, the trauma that you went through, because that you can't turn back the clock. You can't get a time turner and go back into the past and change things. So you kind of just have to embrace everything that happened and celebrate that you're still here and how you're better for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did it happen around 30? Because everyone tells me that when I hit 30, I'm suddenly gonna just not care and feel good.
Yeah, you discover white wine, which is a big help in your 30s.
Sorry to hear that my cat is attacking the scratching post right now.
No, yeah, you do. You kind of like, there's a switch that goes off, and there's no more room to try and change yourself. You have to just accept, okay, this is me, and this is wonderful.
Yeah.
So I usually have these caveats when I meet new people, or I start a new job and I join a new team. I kind of go in with, I might not make eye contact. I don't like team events. I'm going to interrupt you a lot in meetings. I don't like eating my lunch with other people. So I have all these caveats, but it's like, but I'm going to work hard for you. And I'm actually really nice when you get to know me. And I accept them, because it's like, you have to take it or leave it, at a certain point.
Yeah.
So
Just to get back to the book slightly.
Sorry.
I just wanted to talk about, so the book deals with some quite heavy topics, as you will be aware if you have either read or just read the back of the book with the content warnings. And so I thought we should discuss that. And so I'll go first because I can. And it is quite personal. So, so I was very shocked when I first read the book, because I had been told that it was just, like a light and breezy YA. And then we got to where Olivia was assaulted and where she then subsequently, she attempted suicide. I was just completely blown away because I hadn't been expecting it, because there isn't much representation of like mental health issues in contemporary YA that aren't just like sort of, I don't know, glamorized in a way. And also I don't think I've seen like situational depression. I mean, I think Olivia did have issues prior to the assault. But
looking for belonging and her father leaving and
anyway, and so as someone who has struggled with that, it was quite, it was upsetting because it was like looking into, well, not quite a mirror, but like if a mirror was also a time travel machine, to the past. And so the book, it hit really close to home when it got to that part. And, like the things Olivia said and how she was kind of numb, I was very, it like felt real to me. And so I thought it's an important part of the book, and important that it's out there, and that, we start having more books like this, because it is stuff that people face all the time, and it isn't actually like pretty or fun or any of the things that certain media things.
Say certain reasons why.
I'm so glad you knew what I was talking about. Yes, yeah.
I haven't watched it.
Don't. It's not worth it.
Okay.
But anyway, but we're not here to badmouth 13 Reasons Why. Anyway, even though I could for like hours. So anyway, yes, that was my bit about that particular aspect of the book. I haven't personally experienced sexual assault of any kind, but as a woman in South Africa, I have, heard all the things and been scared, and I like send my Uber trips to multiple people, and have had an Uber driver tell me that I would make a very good wife, which was and then he tried to invite himself into the house where I was babysitting, so it's like, okay, no. And I was catcalled one time, and it was awful, and it was only recently, and it was like really awful, and it made me so upset, and that's like, so minor on the scale of sexual assault, and it still made me feel so awful. And so it just like, it always shocks me and horrifies me, and I don't know, my empathy just like skyrockets for anyone who's been through anything anywhere on that scale. It's anyway, I'm gonna stop talking.
So, you know, that particular scene, so, you know, I didn't have the easiest adolescence, and, you know, that scene was actually taken from my life. So that actually happened to me in high school. And it's just one of those ways in which, you know, it's the two different types of books that I write. You know, the stock standard entertaining love story or adventure or whodunit, and the books where my subconscious is trying to interpret and understand some of the things that happened to me in the past. Because, you know, I'm very much one of those people who want to leave the past in the past, and who don't like to think of, you know, some of the bad experiences. You know, I'm the type of person that if I break up with someone, I will donate absolutely everything that is associated with that person to the Salvation Army, and, you know, start again. You know, I don't like thinking about the past, and I don't like, I don't want anything that happened to me to affect me today. You know, I have a path in life that I'm following, and I'm, you know, getting married, and, you know, I have a career, and you know, all these things. But, you know, again and again, I surprise myself by writing about it in stories and creating these allegorical stories, you know, based on my own past experiences. So it's almost outside of myself now, because it's not, you know, it's part of a story, and I've unpacked it, and I've now told that story. I don't have to worry about it. You know, I can go back to not thinking about it anymore. And even when I'm writing it, you know, it's not something that happened to me. It's something that's happening to Olivia in the story, even though, you know, the source of truth is that dusty jar in my subconscious that's been shaken out and all the pieces coming out. So it's like, it's something that, you know, I haven't really spoken to publishers about it, but, you know, there's definitely two types of books that I write. You know, one is the, you know, stock standard love story adventure, and the other one is my subconscious messing around again with my career. So like at the moment, I'm busy writing a story about grief, because my parents passed away in the last 2 years. So I'm writing a story about a girl that loses, you know, her family, and that's just my way of interpreting it. That makes sense to me. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like, it's just, I'm sorry that the scene upset you so much.
No, I mean, it was like a good upsetting, if that makes sense. And you definitely are making sense. I don't write for the public, but I write fan fiction to deal with issues, and except it's not like fan fiction. I'm in the story, and then that's how I deal with my things. I mean, I do also go to therapy, but like, you know, yeah. And so I definitely understand, and it makes sense. Anyone else? Sabreen, you haven't spoken in a while. If you wish to speak.
I mean, I haven't experienced sexual assault either, or like self-harm, so I couldn't relate, but it was certainly upsetting. I mean, I have friends that have experienced both those things, so you know, even though it wasn't like super graphic or like very detailed description of everything that happened, it was like you know, it takes you back to those feelings of hearing what my friends have gone through, and like just like the helplessness of like, I don't know how to make it better. But I mean, it's not my job to make it better, but you always have that feeling like, you know, your friend's in pain, there's nothing you can do. So it's I guess that was more what I was feeling, the helplessness and like that kind of upset. Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a place for stories like this because, you know, they do resonate and they do, you know, touch on certain feelings and emotions and experiences that people have that they might not want to talk about. So, you know, it also helps them realize that they're not alone, and you know, this is not something that happens in isolation. You know, it's something that happens, you know, not only in South Africa but everywhere. I mean, if you look at the you know, the universities in the US, how prevalent this sort of thing is. It's terrifying. Now, Mary, I can't stop looking at you. You look so beautiful. Sorry, Alex, please go.
It's fine. I think I related to Nathan a lot in those kind of scenes because, like, while I haven't directly experienced sexual assault or self-harm, I know a lot of people who have been through things like that. It's much more prevalent than I think anyone thinks it is in high school. And I really related to that feeling of hopelessness, like Sabreen said, when Nathan like didn't know what to do, and kind of what we were talking about earlier with autistic people experiencing empathy. Like, I often find myself in situations where I know one of my friends is going through something really difficult or they're feeling really sad, but I have no idea what I can do about it. And that's something really difficult, that like feeling of hopelessness when you know that something's wrong and you've like identified the emotion, but you can't figure out how to deal with it or how to make them feel better. Yeah.
Oh, so, you know, when I spoke to you guys initially, when we had our little practice Zoom, you know, I was almost, you know, apologetic about the fact that this wasn't one of those books that you clutch to your heart and you want to tell everyone, like The Wren Hunt by Mary Watson is over here. But you know, just hearing you guys, you know, talk about the book and your feelings, you know, I feel like, you know, there is a reason why I wrote this book, and you know, there's a reason why it's on the shelves now, and it's because of those, you know, moments of empathy and those moments of, you know, self-reflection and understanding that are going to resonate with readers. So you guys have actually, you know, made me very happy, you know, that this book is finally on the shelves, and I think I need to, you know, stop apologizing about the content and actually say, you know, this is going to touch you in ways that I can't explain, you know, but I hope you take something from it that, you know, helps you grow, or, you know, helps you maybe, you know, get the introspection on, you know, some of the experiences that have happened to you or friends.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, the book is definitely, I mean, yeah, I used to read, well, I mean, yeah, I haven't read a lot of actual books recently, a lot of fan fiction, but this book was, I don't want to say an easy read, because obviously, as we've discussed, it brought up all sorts of things, but the writing style made the book feel easy to read. I mean, I think I finished it, and I mean, I've read it multiple times because I was part of the editing process, which was very cool as well, to see the book. And I didn't even see it in its like baby form like Juanita did, you know. And when we got the actual physical copies, it was like, oh my god, it's here. Yeah. Anyway, and I definitely think it's an important book, and it should be on the shelves, and so should more books like it, because it does help people to, well, it helps to normalize, I mean, not normalize because the things like sexual assault should not be happening, but normalize talking about it, and the feelings that come up for both the victim and the friends and family, and even just the Shawns of,
Mhm.
you know, the world. And so, yeah, we're getting close to the end of our time, which is, wow, it
Yeah.
feels like it's been very short. So I just wanted to check if maybe the audience had any questions.
Oh, Mary, yes, hello.
Hi. So you were saying a little bit earlier about writing two kinds of books, and that in some of your books you find that kind of deep-seated trauma and problems from the past coming through. And I'm really curious. I haven't yet read the new book. I have my copy. Very excited that I actually have it, and I can sit down and read it after listening to you talk about it. But where would you put mine in those two categories? And I ask this question because I find mine is one of those really powerful contemporary YA books that just stays in my head. And I'm really curious to know where you would classify that.
Yeah, so you missed it earlier, but so mine is one of those boy meets girl, girl meets boy stories, very contemporary, and it actually started out as a superhero story. So I wanted it to be this like urban fantasy novel, with these star-crossed lovers, and then again, my subconscious got in the way, and it ended up being this exploration of the destructive nature of love. So to answer your question, Mary, the character of Qailah, who's very insecure and very self-destructive, was again my subconscious trying to go back to who I used to be, as a young woman, and trying to understand and come to terms with it. So yes, it is very much one of those books.
I could see subconscious there. I was just curious because there was trauma, big time. There was trauma, but I was just curious as to whether that was a conscious thing that you were doing, whether you would consciously file that as a trauma book or as a boy meets girl book, because it is both, but definitely trauma.
Yeah. And I think, to an extent, you're always going to draw on your experiences just to bring that element of realism and truth into, characters' motivations. Everybody has, there are these universal feelings and emotions that people have. So betrayal, disappointment, unrequited love is possibly the worst feeling, that there is, and those are universal things that we all experience. And I think it's key, if you want it to come across as authentic, to draw on those feelings in stories. I think, I don't know if everybody has read Normal People by Sally Rooney. It was quite a international bestseller a few years ago. And, just that feeling of unrequited love is so powerful in that story. It's very clear that she drew on her own experiences. There's no other way to get that authenticity. I mean, well, other than she's an amazing writer.
Yeah. So does anyone else from the audience have any questions, or maybe the panelists have some questions? I don't know. If you don't want to talk, you are welcome to use the chat function, and then I can read out your question and we can answer it. Yes, Juanita.
So something that I found that sorry, time flew and I took up a lot of it blabbering. But I wanted to ask a little bit more about some of the inspirations behind this, because obviously you're mining your own experience a little bit, but were there any depictions of teenagers, and particularly autistic teenagers, that you found bled in? Because, can't help but have that. There are so few that...
I think for this particular story, I didn't draw on characters because, like you said, you've got the the Sheldon Cooper stereotype, and then you've got the kid in, what was that book called, The Serious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
The dog in the...
Yeah, so it was very much just drawing from, people I know, because, as you get older, you're drawn to people that are more like you as well. So, I have been in a long-term relationship with someone who is autistic. I've worked with people who are autistic. I have friends, who are neurologically diverse. So it's just, very much, talking to people about their experiences, just to get that authenticity in and to make sure. And Juanita and Kate, you were very important in this process, just to make sure that you don't fall into the stereotype and you don't, create this, Sheldon character, in the story, because he's the narrator, he's the hero, and I wanted him to be the hero for the reader. I didn't want the reader to lose sight of, okay, this doesn't seem right, or this is a stereotype, or this is, I wanted him to be, Nathan, the hero of the story. And I hope that we achieved that.
I like to think so, but yeah.
I suppose it's, it's very difficult for a writer to write from the first person, or from a guy's perspective, for example, and all these, different, people that exist in the world. And, sometimes you just have to try and be as authentic and reverential as possible, because otherwise, I'm going to be writing books about 39-year-old white women for the rest of my life. I don't want to read that book. So,
Yeah.
but that's a whole new discussion. I don't think we have enough time in the world for that discussion. But yeah, I hope Nathan came across as authentic and real, and if he walked through the door, you would be like, oh, that's Nathan. So I hope I achieved that.
If I can be so bold, from the early drafts to this, he definitely feels more like somebody I would know.
And that's thanks to you. Thank you.
I mean, I think that it's part of every editing process. I mean, I think that just to get a little bit not so specific to this book, we have this notion of writers as, they write the book and it gets edited for grammar and then it gets published. But as the daughter of a publisher and, who's grown up around books and the process of how books go from A to B, or it's more like A to Z, because there's so many in between steps, and there are so many aspects of the editing process that are like, moving little plot points, like, oh, does that make sense there? And like, there is grammar and things. And
entire chapter it just doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah. And, you can, like, I know that, okay, so when I go back and read my old writing from when I was like 13 or whatever, after I get past the, this is very cringy of it, I find that the grammar isn't really the issue, or the spelling, I find that, like, as I've grown as a person, things grow. And I know that a lot of writers that I speak to, like, friends who write not professionally but as a hobby, or they talk about how sometimes there are scenes that they absolutely love, but they have to cut them out because it doesn't fit with the book, but they keep it in their hearts. Or, when they're creating characters, they have all these random little facts, like, the character's favorite type of chocolate and whatever, but you don't put that in the book, but it's like it's all in the writer's brain,
Yeah, and sometimes the editor knows better. I mean, I remember there was I think it was the editor of Sharp Edges. I talk under correction, but she picked up that oh, you described pink candy floss clouds in Dark Poppy's Demise, and now you're doing it again in this book. So I didn't even realize I'd done that. So, you know, sometimes the editor knows even better than you do.
Yeah.
Good writing is good editing, I always tell my students.
I think we're out of time, and we just got a new participant, Sarah. Hello, but we're just about to end, so you joined just a little bit too late. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. I thought it was starting at 7. Oh,
Oh, so sorry.
sorry. I was like really on it. Oh, how sad. Oh, maybe I
Well,
can have the recording.
Yes, it
Yes,
has been
yes.
recorded. So
Yeah, well, this was
Um,
really, really wonderful, and I'm so glad we did this. I mean, this was
Yeah.
amazing, and thank you all for coming and for, you know, being willing to discuss it and go back into it with me.
yeah. Thank you to all of my friends, as we have described ourselves, for being on the panel, and yeah, to those of us who could not join, we missed you. But yeah. Anyway, this was really cool, and I appreciate it, and I hope you all go out and buy a copy of the book. It's very good. And yeah, yes. I don't have my copy here, but it's in my room. But wow, okay. We can all just flex that I'm not prepared with my copy. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. I just realized that like it's like 40 degrees out where I am. So I've just been getting progressively shinier and shinier as the hour has gone on. Oh, but
Thank you
yes.
for organizing this, though.
No,
This
thank
was
you.
cool.
I think it was Kate's idea.
Yeah, sorry, in case it wasn't clear, I was directing that to. I mean, thank you for writing the book so that we could organize it. But
Well, I think it was my mom's idea, but then I kind of ran with it. And anyway, but it doesn't matter. And thank you, and cool, and yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It was wonderful. And thank you, Mary, and everyone who joined. Mwah.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.